If you're like me, an audiophile with tinnitus, it can be a struggle. But there are things that you can do. Today, I'm going to share some of my strategies, and hopefully, a couple of them will help you. Yes, I have tinnitus, and I've talked about this before. I used to always call it tinnitus, which isn't really wrong, but the correct term is tinnitus, or so my ear doctor told me. Mine developed a few years ago. I even had an MRI done to kind of rule out some of the more, scary causes of it. And with tinnitus, there is no cure. And some days it's better than others. Like today. Today is actually a pretty good day. It's mostly in my right ear, but it's always there just hissing away. And it's annoying as fuck. There are things, little strategies, especially when listening to music, that I've picked up along the way that have helped. So let's jump right into it. Reflection and resonance control. Now, I never thought too much about the room in the past. It wasn't until I really got into, the vinyl playback experience that I began to look at the room as another component, especially when it comes to key reflection points. High frequency echoes are especially harsh to my ears. Dampening harsh reflections will reduce or help reduce ear fatigue. The less your room rings, the less your ears will ring. I've tried to diffuse sound by using everyday objects and also heavy curtains over windows. And Mandy and I just recently installed absorption panels behind our listening position to help smooth out the sound somewhat. There is still more here that can be done, and the goal here is to prevent resonant peaks that can irritate sensitive ears. Use rugs, curtains, or even panels at those first reflection points to prevent slap echo and shrillness. And another thing to try, optimize speaker placement. Speaker placement, just tweaking the speakers a little bit, can help mitigate those hot spots of sound that strain your hearing. You might try to avoid placing your speakers too close to, say, bare walls or a corner, where you could end up with muddy bass or treble glare. And now, if high frequencies bother you, you can also experiment with toe in or toe out. Toe out might help soften the treble because you're not pointing the tweeter directly at you. It's slightly off axis, and that can soften the treble a bit and help with those high frequencies. Now, I found a 5-degree tone with my KLH Model 5s in my room to be ideal. Plus, it has an attenuation switch in the back, which will further scale back the treble by about 3 decibels. And if the sound is too bright, experiment by aiming the speakers slightly away from your ears, which is less tone, to rely more on off-axis response, which is a bit smoother depending on your room and your speakers. Find the balance that gives a clear image without being overly harsh in the high end. And while we're on the subject of speakers, look for smooth, low-fatigue speakers. Not all speakers are created equal. Search for and audition speakers that are known for a smooth frequency response and also have low distortion, especially in the treble. And put a little distance between you and your speakers. Near field listening, there's nothing wrong with that. You just don't want the sound to overwhelm your ears. So if you have a large room and you have floor standing speakers, and if possible, maybe around 8 to 12 feet away from those. And if you have smaller monitor speakers or like my KLH speakers as well, that's maybe 6 to 8 feet. I think mine are around 7 feet. And keep the volume in check. Now, this one does get a bit tricky. I like to hear detail, especially if I'm listening to jazz. So I might boost, the volume a bit. But higher volume doesn't necessarily mean better detail. I've found that keeping the level around 70 to 75 decibels at my listening position to be the best for me. Now, to find that, I use a sound meter. You can actually, buy those on Amazon, or there's free ones that you can download on your phone. I use the one on my phone. I actually use a couple different ones. And, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be in the right ballpark. For me, tinnitus will flare up if there is loud volumes. So I try to avoid, loud sounds during the day when possible. Anything that I can do so that when Mandy and I sit down to listen to music at the end of the day, which we do every day to relax, it's a better experience. The tinnitus isn't gone, but it's controlled a little bit. And if you're going for a long listening session, take listening breaks. I try to let my ears rest maybe 5 minutes every hour, and it really depends on the kind of music I'm listening to. If I'm listening to, say, Neil Young playing acoustic, that doesn't strain my ears as much. But if he's playing with Crazy Horse, well then yeah, I sometimes will need that rest. And of course, protect your ears outside of your listening room as well. I stuff cotton in my ears, or I used to stuff cotton in my ears. I have another solution. I'll get to that. But I used to stuff cotton in my ears whenever I was, mowing the lawn or snow blowing, or even when I'm cleaning records. The Record Doctor 10 isn't, extremely loud, but it's still a vacuum machine, and it's not quiet. If you have a project, you know what I mean. That one sounds like a jet airliner taking off. This next one might be a hard pill to swallow, but it is worth mentioning. You can also try using EQ or DSP. Now, I know many will cringe at that, but I did actually used to use tone controls when my main amp was the Galleon TS120. When I switched to the Aric Audio Transcend amp, when that took its place, I no longer had the ability to control bass or treble with knobs. Instead, I focused on brightness solutions, and that meant switching tubes and trying to find the right set of tubes or the right mix of tubes, and also speaker placement and room treatment and all of the things that I've already mentioned. But if you do have tone controls or the ability to, utilize EQ, don't be too proud or too afraid to use it. It can make your system more tinnitus friendly and a more pleasurable listening experience. From what I understand, many tinnitus sufferers, have a problem where the human hearing is the most sensitive, and that's around the 2 to 6 kilohertz range. So if your sound is a bit peaky there, you can always use EQ reduction to reduce fatigue. Strong peaks in the 2 to 6 kilohertz range can be caused by, reflections or bright speakers, and anything you can do to reduce that or smooth it out helps. And if it's EQ with tone controls or even, digital signal processing with room correction, all of those things can help if that's the problem in your room. And I get it. If you're into pure analog playback, the idea of digital signal processing, might make you shudder. I get that. But if you're not averse to it, it is something to look into, and it can help. Anything that you can do to reduce that fatigue or that ear strain is going to help tinnitus. There's no one size fits all here. You can't EQ away tinnitus. It's all internal. And trust your ears as well. If a piece of gear really impresses you, but you find yourself after 30 minutes, strained or your ears need a break, it's probably not the right piece of gear for you. On the other hand, if you're listening to, say, 3 hours of music and you're just enjoying it and not even thinking about your ears, and the tinnitus seems to be, held at bay, well, you hit the golden sweet spot. Another thing is a comfortable environment. A comfortable environment includes your listening chair. You want to be comfortable when you're listening to your music. That could mean having a massage pillow, next to your chair, or a neck warmer. For some folks, any kind of neck strain does cause the tinnitus to flare up. It definitely does me. I hold a lot of my stress in my neck and shoulders, and I do notice when that's at its worst, that's when the tinnitus is also at its worst. There's also things like tinnitus-friendly gear and accessories. There are ear protection products out there which won't muffle the sound, and they're made specifically for listening to music. Foam earplugs, that will muffle the sound. It'll protect your ears, but it is going to muffle the sound a bit. I recently bought these on Amazon. This isn't an ad. I'm not even going to tell you what the brand is, but I think it might have cost me $35. My brother and I were going to see GA20, and it was in a small club in Portsmouth called Jimmy's Jazz Club. Great place, by the way. Anyway, it's not huge, and I knew it was going to be loud, so I bought these, and they helped tremendously. I could hear the music just fine, but it attenuated those, that high pitch treble that will sometimes cause my tinnitus to flare up. Another thing I've been experimenting with is mask or notch therapy. I've only recently started exploring this. It's simply put, it's using white noise or brown noise or pink noise to mask the tinnitus. And there's also the concept of notching out the high frequency that's associated with your tinnitus, or the high frequency that is your tinnitus. And it's really best to consult with an ear specialist to find your frequency and talk about, some treatments that can be done. Now, like I said, I'm not recommending anybody do what I do, but I have been experimenting with it. And there are things online I found that can help you find your frequency. So I found mine, and I've created a wave file that notches out that high frequency that's specifically, I think, the frequency of my tinnitus. And what it's supposed to do is to help retrain your brain. And that's a real thing. I don't know if it's going to work, but I just started doing this. Now, living with tinnitus doesn't mean you have to give up your high-end audio passion. Just little things. protect your hearing, pace your hearing, watch the volume, experiment with speaker placement and room treatments, maybe find some exercises that will help, relax your neck muscles. That I've been doing that as well. There's some yoga that somebody mentioned to me that helps. So I've actually looked that up. It's yin yoga, and I've been trying that to reduce the neck strain. And I think that's helping as well. As I learn more, I will always share it. So that's about it. If this helped you at all, please hit like and subscribe. It helps the channel. I also have a weekly newsletter, and in the weekly newsletters, usually when I talk about things that are a little bit more personal, it's free to join, and I'll put a link in the description. So thank you so much for being here. And until next time, take care of yourself and enjoy your records, and I will see you soon.